from South East London. I went to the Slade School of Fine Art without a foundation. I had 2 scholarships that really helped finance me because we didn't really have any money. I lived in a commune and I painted a lot of backdrops for travelling theatre and for parties at the time. I spent 4 years at the Slade. I ended up really delving into painting really in the last year. It was like all the experiences that I'd had really came into the forefront in the 4th year. I travelled a lot in the holidays. Painting had always been something that I wanted to do, or that I felt I was going to do, but it took a very long time. A lot of life experience has to happen before you get to the point that you really know what you're painting about. And only really now I'm 40 do I feel like I've arrived at that point. A lot of the work is at the moment to do with the shapes and figures, stories to do with gardens. I suppose I come from a traditional point of painting, which is, you know, you could do anything in life, couldn't you? It's what you choose to spend your time doing whilst you're in this world. And that's recently what I've come to realise is that's basically what I do. My intention is to learn to use the brush and just get better and better at that. And I've really come to enjoy the forms and shapes of flowers and the figure. And the figure is one of the hardest things that you can do in paint because it's quite unforgiving and it's hard to get it right. But years of life drawing, years of actually being the model for life drawing classes too, I think come into it. There isn't really a figure that exists in the world that I'm painting. It's more to do with the sort of universal idea of a figure being in a garden setting. Maybe it's you, maybe it's me, maybe it's just somebody that exists in this world that I'm painting. I come from Impressionist school, and what I'm trying to do now is work out how within the world of Impressionism you're looking at light and form and bringing all of those ideas into a contemporary setting. It's not actually quite a tricky thing to do, but one that keeps holding my attention more and more. I think Impressionism, you had Vuillard, Bonnard, Renoir. You had over here in Cornwall people like Laura Knight. She was incredible, and they painted figures in interiors or in garden settings. The premise is quite simple, really. It's all to do with this dreamlike quality and just trying to keep going to make a world of painting, and it's how you live artfully, not just what you create and what you make. A painter's surroundings or environment, or any person, any creative person's environment, and the life that they lead specifically does unavoidably enter into their creative process. So for instance, I work out of Trewhiddon Gardens, very close to St Ives, and it is an absolutely beautiful setting. You've got rhododendrons, camellias, magnolias, and they start flowering really early, and I can see them from my studio window. And the idea of the seasons and cycles of life began to be a symbol that really came into my work. And it also helped because I was in that environment. So when I started painting, I mean, anything over 120 will be worked on really like loose canvas, stapled to the wall, 3 or 4 at a time, and then smaller canvases as well. And I start off quite fast. I'm really like keen on covering all the areas very quickly. I have like little rules in my head that I really don't like to leave the studio with a blank canvas, because I'm scared that I'll get stuck and I'll like kind of tumbleweed then. So I suppose I start very quickly. The image starts to appear, and then the speed of the work will slow down and go into a slower tempo until kind of I know that the form is arising, and then I'll be layering more slowly. And although there's an image there, what I'm actually thinking about is how kind of light falls on that image. And when you're doing and painting in that way, it kind of changes the outcome. So it's a lot of like brush marks and heavily worked, and then slowing down. And I love paint. I want to use paint as a material. So I'm not afraid of like it being quite heavily worked, quite impasto. And you know, it's a painting, it's got to be used and made with the material. I let it emerge, yeah. So so when I paint, I'm quite gung-ho about it, and I want to go straight into kind of attacking mode with it. So I don't really see the point in like a sketchbook or plein air painting anymore, because actually the forms and shapes of the figures and the heart-shaped leaves of the flowers and the movement is something that, you know, through years of painting exists in my head and heart and intuition, and I see all these things around me anyway. So I really like to just go straight into it with paint. I'm a painter, I paint. I do make paintings on paper if I'm traveling. Sometimes they become visual travel logs for, you know, paintings that I'd work back in the studio. But I don't often paint on plein air or directly now, because actually the idea of this garden is something that exists in my head and heart. I let it emerge, yeah. So so when I paint, I'm quite gung-ho about it, and I want to go straight into kind of attacking mode with it. So I don't really see the point in like a sketchbook or plein air painting anymore, because actually the forms and shapes of the figures and the heart-shaped leaves of the flowers and the movement is something that, you know, through years of painting exists in my head and heart and intuition, and I see all these things around me anyway. So I really like to just go straight into it with paint. I'm a painter, I paint. I do make paintings on paper if I'm traveling. Sometimes they become visual travel logs for, you know, paintings that I'd work back in the studio. But I don't often paint on plein air or directly now, because actually the idea of this garden is something that exists in my head and heart. I love flowers and plants, and I see them most of the time. So somehow that goes into my psyche, you know. I'm quite aware. I love gardening, but I'm not very good at it, which is why I kind of paint it instead, and the paintings last longer than like a flower does. So there's like a beauty in the fragility of that, which I love, and I'm trying to get to the essence of it through like shapes and forms and colour, rather than kind of, I'm very much aware. I think, for example, sometimes I do still life, but I feel that's really cruel. So if I take flowers from the studio garden and I put them into a vase in the studio, like I've already killed them, you know, and I find that quite a cruel thing. But sometimes I do that, but it's more about something that exists in the mind, and language that I'm creating, and much more than kind of a visual representation of something that would take the painting somewhere else. And yeah, I'm trying to create a whole language and world, other world. A painting works as a painting. It doesn't have to be like particularly anatomically correct, otherwise it might kill the whole feeling of the thing itself. So yes, you have to get things right to a certain level. I don't know if you kind of notice that in the figures, like, I leave an impression of the face rather than the actual features themselves, and that's something that I choose to do. Yes, I could put the detail in, but then I feel that I'm prescribing too much what this person is, who this person is, and I don't want to do that. I want you to be able to put yourself or your own references into there. So I have to try to get the right balance between the detail and the non-detail, so that you can read your own perception and idea of life into the painting itself. Recently, it's become very important and more important that I include a figure in the landscape. I can't tell you that it'll always be like that, because it can't really be pinned down in terms of what I do. But having the figure in the landscape has become more important over years, and I think that's because it could be you, it could be me, it could be whoever these people are in a day-to-day that want to find peace and solace or salvation in a really, quite heavily stressful and demanding world now. So the figure helps to kind of ground the whole, or frame even the whole painting itself, and it helps, I think, the viewer to put themselves into it. Or maybe they're the voyeur, maybe they're just watching and enjoying, the peace that this person finds in the painting. So, for example, this painting is called How the Light Falls, and it's remembering the dewy leaves, the shapes of the plants, the forms, the figures, the brushwork, the figure as though she's just literally emerging from the garden. And I think that's what a lot of my paintings are about. They're about a transformation of someone coming into themselves, of maybe working with nature, or this idea of being really within a natural setting. So there's so much brushwork on this, and if you notice that the canvas is loose still, this is how they're made in their raw form. And I think what I love about this so much is that it's impermanent. It can't stay like this. After this show, I have to stretch it onto a stretcher bar, and at that point I'll have to rework it again. So within its fragility and impermanence, I think there's something very bittersweet in that. So if I had to choose one painting from the show, it would probably be How the Light Falls.